Rise Lessons in Divorce from a Mom of Children with Special Needs. A conversation with Mary Ann Pano Hughes. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Marianne, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Yeah, so thank you so much for coming, and wanted to have you on for a while to talk about a chapter in your new book called The Other Side of Divorce, breakups that lead to breakthroughs. And so you're a contributor to this book, and you are a parent of special needs children who have spent a number of years of your life working passionately to advocate for kids with special needs and to help their parents when they're going through divorce and after divorce. And so this book made it to the international bestsellers list on Amazon.com, and just wanted to have her come on and discuss a bit more about why you wrote what you wrote and how it can be of help to other parents out there. So let's get started. But first, let's talk a little bit about you and who you are. So who are you, and why did you start this kind of work?
Yeah, so I'm Mary Ann Hughes. I'm the mom, as you mentioned, of two young adults on the autism spectrum opposite ends. So they have different abilities. And so several years ago, I was in a divorce situation, not something I saw coming or expected, but I knew I had to do the best I could through the process to advocate for myself and really for my kids' needs to make sure that they were going to be protected and taken care of in the future. And that was my main intent in everything that I did in my divorce. Glad to say I did get a great result. We're doing well. Everything is fine. But through the process, it was really hard for me to find resources and support to help me navigate the process. And so after I was done with my divorce, decided I wanted to take what I learned through the process that I had been through and help others who are also facing similar challenges. And so that's when I started my company, Special Family Transitions, and went through all kinds of trainings to get professional background information as well. So I'm now a certified special needs divorce coach. And so most of my practice is around that, supporting one parent to help advocate for their kids and get through the process. But I'm also a mediator, an arbitrator, and a parenting coordinator that I've taken those courses. So I can also come in as a neutral third party and help both parents come to resolution and do what's right for the child.
Got it. So a special needs divorce coach. Now, how common is this? Like, how many of you are out there, would you say?
Well, there's not that many special needs divorce coaches. It's actually a new certification that I helped inspire. And actually, I'm one of the instructors in the program, so honored to do that. But there are certified divorce coaches out there. And so our goal is to help people go from the emotion of divorce to the business of divorce, to try to get them to focus on what they need to do to kind of go through the process, whereas maybe a mental health person will help them with the past and traumas and kind of why things happen. But as a coach, my focus on is where are we now and what do we want and how do we get there? So I help connect them with resources, with attorneys, things like that.
Okay, yes. So speaking of attorneys, you know a little bit about my past. I used to work for the Attorney General Child Support Division. And so for many years, I dealt with a lot of parents who were, who had kids who needed supporting to support them. And some of those kids had special needs. And sometimes this became, a concern and a big deal. And sometimes it became very heated and contested. And things got downright nasty, especially on topics like indefinite child support, things like that. So you then, after everything you went through, wanted to help other parents out. So why did you end up contributing to this book?
Right. So you asked about how many of us there are. There's not that many, but I can tell you the rate of divorce for people that have children with special needs is very high.
Yeah.
And so I felt that, like I said, a lot of people don't know that we're out there. And so I want to try to spread the word, let people know that there is hope, there is help, and there is a way to do this in a peaceful manner as much as we can, in a way that is supportive to the family and to the children. And so when I was putting together my information, I even have a little course I put together, and I was trying to figure out how can I combine the information that I've learned and that my top tips for people into a small, easy to digest format. And so I developed a framework I call RISE, RISE, partly because that is a way I kind of approach things, kind of to rise above and do things in a positive way. But also, each letter in RISE stands for different things to do and consider as part of a divorce involving a special needs child. And so in my chapter, I kind of break that down and kind of give you highlights of what to do and think about and how to get through divorce in a positive fashion. And then the lessons I learned and looking at it as a positive thing for the future in terms of how to embrace the change and how to help your kids through the transitions.
Yeah. Can you give us some pointers on the steps of RISE?
Sure. So the first thing is to kind of realize where you are. Some people deal with the grief cycle, as they call it. And so some people get stuck in the denial phase. Sometimes one parent may be stuck in that way and not want to do what they need to do to accept the diagnosis or that the divorce is happening. Or like you said, some people, like we talked about earlier, some people maybe aren't on the same page about the level of disability for that child and what they're going to need for the future. So that's kind of a part of the R aspect of it, to kind of remember who you are and realize kind of what you're going through. And then the main part of that is investigate and identify what your child's going to need in the future, because until you have a good handle on that, you can't really put the costs together that will help support your child in the future. And so I look at special needs divorce, as I call it, not just getting through divorce and being done, but more of a long-term kind of life care planning process. So you have to think about, as part of your discussions in divorce, even if your child is young or even if they're older, what's the future going to look like? Because the needs of a child with a disability are not just going to go away when they turn 18. And so you have to think about how we're going to support the child when they're young, as well as start thinking about and having things in place so that they're protected for the future.
Got it. So now, did you finish all the parts of RISE, RISE?
Sure. So I did. So I broke it down kind of in a high level in the book. Of course, I can go into more detail with when I'm live. I'm actually going to put together a group coaching program kind of based around that as well. But for instance, S, one of the things it stands for is special needs considerations. So there's things in a special needs divorce that are different, perhaps, or don't need to be considered as part of a typical divorce. Yeah. And so part of it is the long-term planning, but also part of it is working with professionals who understand, such as family law attorneys, estate planning attorneys, financial teams that can understand how to put together documents and projections and different instruments so that when the child is older, or whether it's now or in the future, that they won't be disqualified for government benefits. So for an example, a child right now, or anybody, no matter the age, can only have $2,000 worth of assets in their name for them to qualify for some government programs and benefits. And so people may not know that, and then they are not either able to get approved, or then they find out they have to pay back, or then there's an issue then with child support, the way it's set up too. So all these things kind of work together and come into play. And so you want to work with people who understand how that works so that you're not in a position later where you have to go back and modify or have your family suffer as a result.
Exactly. There's some things that come up that might be difficult for people to go through themselves, and that's why they would need someone to help them, like you. Things like indefinite child support, things like the Social Security office and dealing with that. Things like ARDS, because if you're working in the school system, with the school system and the teachers involved, there's lots of federal regulations that apply over children and the accommodations that they need in the classroom. So it's not something that people typically think about, right? And that's why there has to be a special area devoted just for them. What about men? I was thinking, do you think, does this whole topic impact guys as well, and fathers? Because a lot of times people might think, oh, it's just a woman's issue and it's all about moms and how you can help them. But do guys need the same support as well?
Sure. So I will say that most of the people who tend to work with me and seek me out are women. And that's for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're more comfortable reaching out. Yeah. Maybe they're the ones who are the primary caregiver and have these concerns. And so, but I think both parents should definitely be involved and take an active role in planning for that child and continuing to be involved in that child's life, whether it's possession time, whether it's financial support, whether it's emotional support or ongoing. And so it's one person can't handle it all, right?
Right.
So there's a huge issue with burnout among caregivers of children with disabilities. There's financial pressures. There's all kinds of things, like you said, between the schools and therapies and planning for the future. What's that child going to do when we're too old to take care of them, or where they're going to go and live? These are all things that are keep people up at night, and so that affects both mom and dad. And so we want to, as much as we can, have that be a positive co-parenting relationship, during divorce as well as after. And so that's why I became a mediator and doing some other things to help both parents kind of come to understanding of what that child needs and how they can both contribute and support that child during divorce and after as well.
Okay. And when you say after, you brought up, what happens when the parents, get older? How do you deal with this? So even guardianships that might come up, right?
Right, right. So you want to think about guardianships and other ways that that child is going to be taken care of when we're no longer, able to, or even guardianships in terms of who's going to make decisions. So as part of divorce, there's decision-making authority. So even though you may have, ability to both have the child and joint managing conservatorship and all kinds of things, but one parent may be more the one more involved day to day, and maybe they have the primary decision-making authority, even though both parents are active. But maybe you consult with the other parent, and maybe one parent then at the end of the day makes the decision for those kind of areas, even though we want people to be involved. But we don't want, the last thing we want is for a third party who doesn't really know our kids to be the tiebreaker and make the decisions for that child.
Yeah. And does it matter where the parents live? I know you're based in Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned joint managing conservatorship a second ago. So JMC is a phrase you hear typically in the Texas courts. I'm licensed in Florida as well. So if a mom or a dad is anywhere in the country, will they still be able to get your help?
Yes, my information is universal, and so I just kind of threw that in because I know we're in
Yeah.
Texas, but I know that you've got a nationwide and maybe worldwide audience too. And so yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't give legal advice. So I try not to use those legal phrases. But yeah, I'm here to help people no matter where they are. Most of my work is via Zoom, even for my people who are local in Texas. And so I'm in Houston, but definitely help people around the state and around the country, and I've got international clients as well. So I'm here to help people go from kind of being overwhelmed and not knowing what to do with all the complexity of divorce that is involved and with a child with special needs, and help them put together a plan and resources to get through the process. And so I also help after divorce, because maybe sometimes it's a co-parenting issue. And so honored to provide support there as well. And then that's a great way for both parents to be involved, to maybe get on board and have maybe similar routines and structures at each home, so that there's less anxiety and issues with the child adjusting.
Yep. So let's talk about resources. So what are some resources for parents who are going through something like this, where they have special needs child between the two of them? Can you give some tips and aids that are out there?
Sure. So I have a lot of things that I share on my social media, which is called Special Family Transitions. I've been on lots of podcasts where I share lots of great information. And so that's a great way to start from my website, Special Family Transitions, and everything for my social media is under that. But also, I've put together a new website with a colleague of mine, another certified divorce coach, called Divorce with Special Needs Children. And so there we're pulling together resources that I wish I had when I was going through it, to have access to information and mediators and financial people, mental health professionals across the country. And so that way, no matter where you are, you can find help to support you in your situation. But I think it's really important to have a family law attorney who understands special needs considerations. You have to have an estate planning attorney who also can help you set up the trust. There's third-party trusts and there's first-party trusts that are involved for child support. You want to have a financial advisor who understands the special needs aspects as well, so to help you plan for the future. and then also mental health professionals to help you and the kids as well. And of course, you want to have a certified special needs divorce coach to support you through the process too.
Yes, and I'm screen sharing your website. So the best place people can reach you is specialfamilytransitions.com. And everything that you mentioned, this is going to be the best way to get right to it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, just there's a contact form on there. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me a note and I'll get back with you. Happy to do complimentary consultation, learn about your situation, and connect you with the resources that you might need.
Okay, so a second ago, you brought up a topic that I've heard about, but I honestly don't know too much about it,
Mhm.
and that is a special needs trust that exists with the child support somehow. Can you talk a bit more about that? Because I know people, somebody has brought this up to me before, and they asked me about it, and I was like, I'm not too sure. But this is an opportunity. Could you just share a little bit about it?
Sure. So, especially when the child is over 18, child support becomes their money. And like I mentioned, we don't want to have money in the child's name. And so that's why if you have the money set up to go into a first party supplemental needs Medicaid payback trust, kind of a fancy name, and I'm not going to, like I say, leave legal terms, but you want to work with somebody who understands how to do it and have that in your divorce decree or modification later if you need to, so that the money there will not then disqualify you from getting, say, Social Security income or other benefits in the future. And so by sending that information to those government agencies, they can look at how the money is being set up. And so then you'll be approved. Whereas if it's going straight to the child directly into a bank account, then it may not be approved. And so there's lots of things behind that, but
Yeah.
that's basically what a first party trust is for. And then there's third party trusts, which are there once again to protect the child so it's not in their name, but things like life insurance and beneficiary of different policies should go to the third party trust and not directly to the child.
Yes. So most of this work, is it stuff that people can do themselves, or do you recommend they get an attorney alongside you? So when I say do
Mhm.
themselves,
Sure.
um, you're not a lawyer, but should people get attorneys involved?
If you can, I would definitely. It may be an investment in the on the front end, but it's gonna save you a lot of money and heartache later in case then things don't work out
Yeah.
the way they need to. So yeah, definitely if you can, work with an attorney, work with a mediator to get things going. And like I said, there's estate planning. That part of that is they're the ones that are involved in guardianship and things like that. If you need those kind of things too, but yeah, definitely, I would definitely, if you can, work with professionals who understand and have experience with special needs cases so that you and your children will be protected.
Yeah. So do you have any stories for us? Anything that, without any confidentiality being blown,
Mhm.
of course, something that might connect with a parent out there who might want to hear some of the work that you've done and how it connects with whatever they're going through.
Sure. So, um, for example, I had one client who was in a very high conflict situation. And so she was able to put together some um, reference materials and resources for the soon to be ex to then refer to. Because one thing I share with people is how to communicate effectively with your ex-spouse or soon to be ex-spouse. So we want to do it in a professional, civil manner. There's the BIF format: brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And so we want to adhere to that during our divorce process, not have it be emotional and but have it be looked like we talked about as a business deal, a financial and legal transaction. And so by presenting things in a non-threatening, neutral manner, in a helpful manner, I think the other side is more likely to participate and then take those suggestions, which sometimes we don't want to hear things from the ex-spouse, granted, and that's where I can come in and be a neutral party. But I want the people, the family, to be able to do it on their own. And so I share with them that they can provide information and resources, whether they're providing it or through a third party, that comes across as something, as a resource and helpful, so that they can refer to it when they need help. So, for instance, she sent him some Amazon links for when he was going to travel for the first time with his child without her, so that he could have all the equipment needed and all the things that mom maybe normally would take
Yeah.
care of. And so, yeah, there's a lot of sometimes fear among both parents, one who has been the caregiver because they've done all the caregiving and all the behind the scenes work, and maybe dad is kind of worried because he hasn't had that experience. So we want to get both parents comfortable with the situation because they're both going to spend time, hopefully, with the child, so that one person kind of gets up to speed on what they need to do, and the other person becomes comfortable that they've shared the information, so that they're not worried so much about the child when they're under other parents' care.
Yeah. Do you ever have any situations where people are really distant, like physically, geographically, where one parent has special needs children living in one state with her, and the other parent is like 5, 10 states away, and might that create a lot of concern?
Sure. So that's when it takes even it's even more important to have that good communication relationship and things in place. So, for instance, you could be using a parenting app. You
Yeah.
can do things via Zoom, to communicate and get the both parents involved with the children. And so, yeah, it's really, each situation is different. You want to look at as to what does that child need and how can both parents support and be there for the child. Even if you're not physically there, the other parent can still be involved. Like you said, sometimes it's just child support, but hopefully it's more than that. Hopefully they're continued to be a part of that child's life.
Yeah. So just curious, how challenging can this all get? Like if you have a child that's like nonverbal, can't communicate with the one parent the way that that parent expects or would like to be able to, communicate with the child. Um, I'm pretty sure, I'm guessing you've seen a lot of really difficult situations.
Sure. Um, so sadly, I see that there's a lot of divorce, and not because of the child per se, but because the parents don't know how to manage that stress and get support for being a parent of a child with special needs. So it does cause a lot of stress, and part of it is that maybe one parent is in a different place in terms of that grief cycle about being on
Mm,
board of where the child is and
yeah.
what they need, and part of it is just they just can't handle the pressures and decide another life is what they want. And so wherever those parents are, it's still important to work together, figure out what does that child need and how can we best support the child now and in the future. So yeah, ideally everybody gets along, but I know that's not always the case. And
Yeah.
so we want to provide schedules and ways that both parents can continue to be involved in that child's life. And then one thing that's important too, because like you said, there's a lot of the child may be nonverbal, may not be able to express themselves, and so you have a lot of anxiety for that child and behavior issues that then you have to address with that child for whoever's going to be with that child at the time in terms of their parenting time. And so what I did to explain to my kids, one is more verbal than the other one is very verbal, and one was not able to get support. So I tried to find somebody to explain the divorce situation to my child who has more challenges, and so I couldn't find anybody to help. And so what I did is I created what they call a social story. And
Okay.
it's like a little storybook. They can do it at different levels depending on what your child is able to do and understand. And I did it in such a way that broke it down in a very loving, supportive manner so they could understand what was happening, and they could see what the schedule was going to be, which granted, you don't want to do anything suddenly, maybe build up to a possession schedule, have it be regular if you can, because kids with autism, they thrive on structure and routine, and they don't like unpredictability and a lot of change. And so we want to do things as consistent as we can, as slowly as we can, so that they're not taken by surprise and they're comfortable with what's going to happen next, or know at least have an idea what's going to happen. So you can also do visual schedules. You can do all kinds of things and maybe have the schools and therapists involved to help support the family and the child during that time.
Gotcha. So a lot of things to consider and think about, and some of the takeaways I'm having are: one, make sure you're staying really close with the schools and the teachers because they're going to be working with those kids, all the time. Two, make sure you stay in communication with the other parent. Those parenting apps are awesome, like App
Mm-hmm.
Close, Our Family Wizard, TalkingParents.com. Those tools will save your co-parenting from stress. And And I think money is always going to be an issue because special needs children tend to, in my opinion, have needs that other kids don't have, and so therefore someone's got to fund it. But there's help out there, right? The financials doesn't have to be a complete difficulty, especially with Social Security and some of the other things that your book talks about. So if anybody is going through some of these issues, best way to deal with it is contact you and try to get your help. Well, all right. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to close us out?
Yeah, I just want to mention, so I talked about the social story. So on my YouTube channel, which is also Special Fame Transitions, I do have a video that I created about how I created one for my family.
Okay.
I'm happy to help people develop one for their family as well. Because, yeah, we want to do things kind of at the child's pace. So we don't want to talk about the divorce and adult conversations in front of the kids, because even though our kids may not be verbal, they still can understand what we're saying, even if not the words, then the tone. So we want to be a role model for our kids. During divorce, we want to handle ourselves well, kind of rise above, kind of,
Yeah.
why I use some of that terminology, but do things in a way that will make you proud of how you handle your situation years later, and that your kids can look and see what you did for them, even if they can't express it. They know that you're there for them emotionally, and whatever they need, you're there to be their advocate, like we're advocates for our kids in school and through the school system. Same thing like in divorce. We're here to advocate for their needs as part of the divorce process.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your work in this area because it's all coming from a place of love, right? You love your children and you want to make sure that they're not without and that they're not treated any differently from any other child out there. So I appreciate your work. And the book, The Other Side of Divorce, Breakups That Lead to Breakthroughs. Love the cover, with that cake. So, and you're chapter 14, and that is Rise, Lessons, and Divorce from a Mom of Children with Special Needs. Marianne, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. All right, guys. Until next time, come back to lmipodcast.com where we have this and lots of other videos that educate and inform you. Okay, guys. Until next time, take care.